Hi, troublemakers, and thank you for tuning in to this smoke signal. And I am gladly joined by the one and only Boniface Mwangi. Now, I'll give him room to introduce himself so that you know who he is. Boniface, to you.
My name is Boniface Mwangi. I'm a human rights defender and I'm running for president of the Republic of Kenya.
For this smoke signal, I have a couple of questions tailored to you. The first question is from protest to power. So the Gen Z have shown that they can mobilize and disrupt. Yeah. So what will it take for this energy to translate into real political power by 2027?
So thank you for having me. To get it political power, they'll need to be able to have political formations. That means they need to organize around an institution with a political party or a political movement. They need to be able to have an agenda beyond Ruto must go and give a vision to the country and tell them this is what we're going to deliver when we get into power. And they'll need to do a lot of political education, not only for the as the masses actually, but also for the voters. So they need to get self political education, number one. So primarily they need to be self educated, understand how political power works, how governance is structured, and how maybe to even to get elected. And then they'll need to do a lot of civic education because the older generation actually despise young people. They don't see them as leaders. They see them as disruptors. So there'll need to be a bit of a shift in in the way we demand for political change. So from say an occupied status and occupied parliament, it just say let's overthrow the current political elite through the ballot. So we move from occupying to a ballot revolution.
The second question is about the question of leadership. So, given that the Gen Z organizing is intentionally decentralized, how can the movement balance staying horizontal while also building visible leadership for elections?
So decentralization doesn't mean without leadership. There's leadership. What they need to do is be able to come up with a committee or a council of leaders who will speak for the movement and who will say this is the agenda for the movement for the next 1 year or between now and the elections. But they cannot escape now from having a formal leadership to lead the movement.
The next question is about co-optation and independence. So, as 2027 approaches, established political actors may try to absorb Gen Z energy. What should young people watch out for, and how can they avoid being co-opted?
So you only get co-opted if you don't know what you're trying to do. But if the Gen Z have an agenda, clear agenda, uh, the current political class cannot deliver the Gen Z agenda. They cannot jail the thieves, recover what's stolen, return stolen land, and take accountability of what has happened in the last 60 years. That means there's no possibility of corruption as a movement. So maybe some leaders can sell out, but as a movement, they can never sell out. And that's what I'm saying. The Gen Z must come up with a clear agenda for the country and tell Kenyans this is where we want you to go, or this is where we want the country to go. Then they carry us with them. So basically, it's the Gen Z to set the agenda, and if they set the agenda, even the people who are trying to be opportunists to come and ride the wave of the Gen Z will be unable to because they know very well if the Gen Z come into power, they're going to be jailed. They're going to return what they stole. So basically, as a movement right now, it needs to define itself. What are they going to deliver when they get into power? And that will stop corruption.
Thank you. The next question is about the cost of challenging power.
Mhm.
You have faced repression for speaking truth to power. If Gen Z becomes a serious movement or political force, what kind of risks should they realistically prepare for, and how could they build resilience against it?
So at the moment, Gen Z are facing over surveillance. They've been tailed. They've been arrested for previous charges. The government is listening to their devices, and one of the ways they need to be able to stay safe is to ensure that they don't have a routine. They minimize communication with their gadgets, and when they meet, they should have no technology in the room. They should run the movement and the committees as cells. So on a need to know basis, no one needs to know the entire plan. So people need to know about the plan that they're supposed to handle, but no one should actually have the entire plan. And And finally, they need to be able to hide in plain sight. They need to operate during the day, avoid night movements, and to work with a lot of. They need to mistrust uh, strangers and mistrust people who come with good intentions, and they need to be able to find ways to give out misinformation or leak misinformation to find out if they have a mole inside the movement. So basically, they should think like spies, because the government is spying on them. The government is tracking the movement, so they need to be able to do things that might look obvious, but it's only them who understand what they're trying to do. They need to camouflage and even find ways to hide messages. But as we get to the elections, the plans must evolve. So you can there's not only one way to remove Ruto. There must be many ways. So they keep on evolving. And I think finally they should entrust the Kenyan people to remove Ruto. So which means that they should allow us to the I'm talking as a millennial, I'm not a Gen Z, but I'm saying the Gen Z should be able to allow us to be able to support them in a way that Ruto goes home quicker.
If we are to look beyond elections visions, what are your thoughts if Gen Z gains influence or proper power in 2027? Like, what changes must happen, not just in leadership, but in how Kenya is actually governed?
The Gen Z must ensure that Kenya becomes a country of rule of law and restore the dignity of every single Kenyan. Our country is um, very violent towards poor people. They're marginalized, they lack opportunities, they get arrested, they get harassed, and they have nothing actually. We have people in this country who live worse than dogs. So there is that bring back the dignity. There must be social security. That means that guaranteed free education, guaranteed free healthcare, sanitation for all. That means you get clean water in every household. They must ensure that the land that was stolen either back in the colonial days or in the last 60 years has been returned, and everyone has a piece of land or a place to call home. They must recover what has been stolen over the years, and they must jail every single thief since independence. I have a radical proposal. I believe that we should publicly execute economic thieves. Anyone who has stolen money that has led to mass deaths, loss of opportunities for young people, people who have made this country stagnate for so long, don't deserve to live. But what I'm calling for is what we would call judicial executions. They should be arrested, prosecuted, and if they are convicted and they exhaust all their appeals, then there should be public hanging at Uhuru Park and everyone should see. And that would become a deterrent to those who want to destroy our country through looting.
Thank you for that radical proposal. Just one more. In your view, what is the biggest mistake the Gen Z movement could make between now and 2027?
Oh, the biggest mistake would be to join the current political system or work with the current elected politicians. They should stay as far away as possible from those politicians.
For a Gen Z who is watching you right now, who is still in fear of demanding what is right, who is still in fear in joining movements or doing what is right for the Kenyan people, what is your statement or rather advice to them?
There's a lady called Wanjera, and she says, when you lose our fear, they lose their power. So you need to lose your fear. And fear doesn't mean that you become reckless or you go and face bullets or you go and start fighting the police. No, fear means that you lose your fear by organizing, by self-education, by planning to overthrow this regime. So do not let your fear paralyze you. Do it in spite of the fear, do it in spite of the threats, and know that if you don't fight now, you'll end up being a slave to the system. So you're not only fighting for a better life, you're fighting for your right to breathe and your right to freedom and your right to exist. So fight, fight, fight. And remember this, you can never achieve anything without courage. So get that courage.
Is there anything that you would like to talk about that I have not asked you by questions?
I think there is one of my favorite quotes by Thomas Sankara, and he was referring to soldiers. Said soldiers without political education are potential criminals, and I think activists without political education and young people without a political education are potential sellouts, traitors, and useless citizens. But people who have a political education become the revolutionaries and the leaders that our country needs. So instead of agonizing, organize, educate, and you will liberate your country.
Thank you so much, Boniface, for joining the Smoke Signals today.
Thank you for having me.
Hi! We hope you enjoyed the conversation on this episode of Troublemakers and feel inspired to stir up some good trouble in your own community. Do feel free to check out our other episodes and subscribe to Troublemakers Podcast in your preferred podcast app. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook as troublemakers.podcast for all the latest updates, behind the scenes content, and sneak peeks of what's coming next. We also love to hear from our listeners. You can email us via troublemakersthepodcast@gmail.com or simply drop a DM through our social media. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, take a moment and share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really helps us grow our community of troublemakers. Keep shaking things up.